If David and Victoria could preemptively sell their death to Netflix for a 10-part series and bring the kids into it, they would.
Give her some grace. If she wants to grind Pondy dance floor or grind on you, she can do that.
They're the biggest, most iconic brand in the world. I'm sure he didn't just decide overnight, let me go and create a war with my parents. That's not kind.
Blake Lively v Justin Baldoni. It's so cringe-making, the whole thing.
I get people are over it. I get people want to move on, but please don't allow you to not see just what's happening. The abuse of power is from that duo.
Kanye West blaming all his anti-Semitism and pro-Nazi crap on a detachment from reality caused by injury to the frontal lobe of his brain.
What you should do is you should give all your royalties to Jewish people, to the black community, to the people you've hurt. That's how you say sorry. You take accountability. You don't just release a statement that's probably not even written by you. It's insane behavior.
I think it's just all bullshit. Imagine the scenario: an ungrateful son born into a life of immense privilege, turning publicly on his fated father, a pampered wife whose recollections seem to vary from those of the posh matriarch, an iconic British family unravelling in an ugly public spat. Well, for once, it's not Harry and Meghan. The saga of the Beckhams has gripped the internet in my brief absence, and I thought we should get to the bottom of what is really going on here. Here to give their take, Uncensored contributors Esther, Krakue, comedian and commentator James Barr, and the host of Popcorn Planet, Andy Signore. Well, welcome to all of you. Everyone's been talking about this. I was having to endure this as I lay in a hospital bed on morphine, having fractured my femur, and I determined after about an hour of people talking about it, it was the only thing I could think of that was actually more painful than fracturing a femur and having a replacement hip, was the Beckham family saga. But let's try and break this down a bit. Esther, my take is this. The Beckhams, the family, led by the parents, if David and Victoria could preemptively sell their death to Netflix for a 10-part series and bring the kids into it, they would, right? Yeah. They are the single most commercial money grabbers I think I've ever seen in the history of celebrity, and that bar is very high. So they've been utterly shameless. They sold their wedding, they sold their christenings, they sold their baby pictures, and so these kids were brought up into a world where everything was commercialized. And I can imagine that has inevitably, along with their gigantic fame, it has a corrosive effect on them. However, there are lots of kids that grow up to famous parents, including ones who do deals to sell stories, magazines, interviews, whatever. And they don't all turn out to do what Brooklyn Beckham has done here. And I just think what he's done, very similar to Prince Harry, right? Yeah. He's met and fallen in love with an American woman where they may have a different outlook about this kind of thing, who seems to have, with, I don't know how, but has wrestled him away from his family over back to America, and then all hell's broken loose, and now we've got a complete estrangement. The parallels are obvious, as I detailed in a monologue there, but from my point of view, therefore, as a father of three sons, for example, all hovering around Brooklyn's age, I was with them at the time the other day. I would be so enraged if one of them had the brass neck to do this, given the whining in that statement, the entitlement, the victimhood, all of it, from a boy who's had the silver spoon from the day he was born, right, pretends to be a photographer, can't even get a bloody elephant in focus, which is miraculous, right, given the size of an elephant.
They're very difficult to
He makes sandwiches and calls then he calls himself a chef but can basically cook a sandwich and beans on toast and so on, trading off the Beckham name like Harry trades off being a royal. So the parallels are there. They're different stories, but the common theme is, handsome young son meets American woman, gets wrestled back to America. Next thing, whole family estranged. What's happening?
Yeah. I have this theory that American women that marry into prominent British families are like a secret nuclear weapon, and it's a form of terrorism, domestic terrorism, that is being imported onto the British Isles, because this always happens. I think in the case of Brooklyn, He's so ungrateful. This is someone that tried to convince people when he was moonlighting as a chef that they should boil pasta with seawater. Because somehow people want brown floating things in their pasta. And he's only been able to do that because his parents, as much as he doesn't like the fact that they have commercialized their name to the high heavens, have been able to give him that kind of platform. Now I know that the Beckhams, like, they speak money first. I mean, David Beckham got in trouble during the Qatar World Cup for volunteering his commentary, and members of the LGBT community was like, "Oh, he's an icon. Why is he doing this? Homosexuality is illegal." Because money comes first, and this is something people need to understand about the Beckhams. Anyone who's been in their orbit knows that that's what matters. But at the end of the day, being a Beckham has afforded Brooklyn Beckham all these benefits. And I'm sorry, all of his grievances are quite pathetic. So what if your mum was shaking her ass at your wedding? Okay, she hasn't done this since the Spice Girls. Give her some grace. If she wants to grind Pondy dance floor or grind on you, she can do that. She gave birth to you. Like, he's just his grievances are so pathetic. And the reason why I had to draw parallels with Prince Harry is because they have no grace with their family. It's kind of just this grievance economy they exist in. If someone makes me a little bit upset, I can't have a high tolerance threshold for my family, which is effectively the first tribe. It's the only tribe that you ever really truly belong into because you're bonded by blood. So it's just this kind of entitlement where he thinks, oh yeah, I'm not going to speak to my parents anymore because my mum was whining Pondy dance floor at my wedding. Get over it.
Yeah, I mean, James, when I read this statement, 6 pages of stuff on Instagram just spray gunning his mum and dad. And about the first dance, there's a lot of conjecture about whether it was even the first dance. Apparently, there had been an earlier one. I think I know the flashpoint from everything I've read. But he says, in front of our 500 wedding guests, Mark Anthony called me to the stage. He was DJing, wherein the schedule was planned to be my romantic dance with my wife. But instead, my mum was willing to dance with me. She danced very inappropriately on me in front of everyone. I've never felt more uncomfortable or humiliated in my entire life. Really, mate? You've never been more uncomfortable than your mum having a bit of fun with you, dancing at the wedding? I think the flashpoint is that Mark Anthony introduced and said, I'm now going to bring up the most beautiful woman in the world, I think is what he said. Right?
Well, the most beautiful woman in the room. Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Was it in the room?
Posh is pretty hot,
Peltz
though.
was obviously... She'd obviously already started to move and then realised to her utter horror it wasn't just not her, it was the mother-in-law.
I know.
Now,
I think
that is guaranteed.
So my friend Fat Tony DJ'd at the wedding, and you probably saw his statement on it, and he said that, it was really awkward and a bit inappropriate for everyone, but not because of the dancing, not because she was grinding up against Brooklyn, but because the whole point of it was that it was going to be the first dance, and then Mark Anthony obviously made this joke, invited Victoria up for this romantic Latin dance and was telling Brooklyn where to put his hands. That's not nice for anyone, but if there's already a rift there between Nicola and Victoria, which it sounds like there was, that is going to really hurt. And then Nicola left the room, and then Brooklyn eventually then left the room. It just sounds really awkward, to be honest. I find that so offensive what Esther just said, by the way. I love you so much, Esther, but describing an American woman entering a British marriage with a man as a nuclear bomb is crazy. I think what's actually happening in terms of Meghan and Harry and Nicola here is that Americans do a lot more self-work, right? Like, I think it's fair to say that Americans know what words like boundaries are. British people are sort of a bit more stiff upper lip. So when it comes to an American woman entering, like, she's meeting a British man, she's teaching him words like boundaries, and so he's learning how to respect himself, which, quite frankly, he needed to do, because, as we've pointed out on this panel a few times.
All right. Let me bring in Andy. I mean, there were lots of things that Brooklyn said, which I can quite believe. It was a whole shenanigans around the dress. Apparently, Victoria cancelled making Nicola's dress in the 11th hour. We don't know why. Brooklyn said his parents have repeatedly pressured and attempted to bribe me into signing away the rights to my name. I can quite believe that. They have a battery of lawyers that want to control all image rights for themselves, their family. He says that he and his wife had travelled to the UK for Sir David's birthday, but were rejected for a week as we waited in our hotel room, trying to plan quality time with him. And it all sounds completely absurd, but then all family disputes, when they're aired in public, always sound absurd, don't they? Have you noticed? Because they're so deep, these things blow up after years. And when they get exposed to, when you hear about your friends, right? Think about friends who've been through terrible family bust-ups. They always sound slightly mad. I think these things send them all mad. He said, Beckham comes first. This is the bit that really, I thought, resonated. Family love decided by how much you post on social media. I've been controlled by my parents for most of my life. I grew up with overwhelming anxiety. For the first time in my life since stepping away from my family, that anxiety disappeared. This sounds like Harry, but Harry's anxiety has not disappeared. He's not found a better, happier, more enriching life. He's back in court in the UK at the moment, suing another newspaper group. You see, the one I used to be with. He's got this pathological thing about the media, whilst as everybody keeps pointing out, aggressively invading the privacy of the royal family for money whenever it suits him, right? So there's complete hypocrisy there. But putting that to one side, where's your sympathy here? I mean, the interesting American angle to this is the Peltz family are worth billions. Nelson Peltz is a billionaire investor, her father. There is a theory they're trying to kind of slightly flex their financial muscle, pull rank, show the Beckhams what real wealth looks like and so on. But is it simpler than that? Is it just that there's an American-British thing here which just doesn't work, that we just shouldn't marry each other?
I don't know if it's that. I mean, rumors are Harry is now coaching him, Piers. That's what I've heard. But what shocks me is the fact that, yeah, look, this guy, most people are lucky to have one dream achieved. This guy's had like 8 achieved, all sponsored by his parents. So I'm not going to doubt that being a Beckham is hard. I'm not going to doubt that brand Beckham is important. You couldn't have all those dreams without brand Beckham. You got to just bow to the crown or bow to the brand. That comes with the territory. And I do believe there's trouble there, but do I have empathy? No, there's so much bigger things happening in the world. And the fact that he's on Instagram and he can't spice up his life with his mom at the dance floor is absurd to me. This is a guy who's making hot sauce. He needs to spice it up more. He needs to be okay with this. It does feel like I just can't stomach anybody who will go public and trash their parents. Unless their parents are abusive, unless their parents are, abuse them in some way, there's no excuse to go out there and tarnish them and hurt the brand that built you.
Yeah, but also there's the hypocrisy of them wanting to continue the brand, which he will do aggressively. If he thinks anyone's buying his pictures as a photographer or buying his sandwiches because he's anything other than a Beckham, he's living in cloud cuckoo land. He's got 15 million, whatever many it is, followers on Instagram and so on. All this is residual fame from his parents. And it's on a human level, it's incredibly sad. I couldn't think of anything worse than if one of my kids disowned me like this. But actually, the only worst thing is doing it publicly and trashing relationship.
You glossed over, Piers. Like, he is caught lying because you were like, oh, some of this stuff could be true about the dress. It's important. Like, he's caught lying about that. She was in Vogue magazine talking about designing that for a year, her dream-long wedding dress. And he puts that in as one of the prime examples. So how can I trust anything else he said when she's clearly, she had 4 dresses, I think, for that wedding at various parties. So how can we believe anything he's saying if he's going to lie about the dumbest things, such as the dress, which clearly was not an 11th hour cancellation?
Well, as Her Majesty once said, recollections may vary. And although there are different stories about the dress, I do think if he's experienced what he says he's experiencing, it's okay for him to say, I don't want to be part of this anymore. And that isn't him using the brand.
Yeah, but on Instagram, and if that's, I'm sorry, his tolerance threshold is pathetic. These grievances are not like, someone was sexually assaulted, or there was some sort of massive fraud that took place. Oh, she didn't design my fiance's wedding dress. Oh, she was grinding on me at my wedding. Get over it. Are you serious? This is indicative of the kind of generation we're living in, where
I agree. I agree. It's also it's hard to think of anything nastier to say about your mother than what he said about Victoria. Basically accusing her of being a bit perverted and sort of abusing him in some sexual way at his wedding. I mean, it's really revolting, actually, what he did. I want to bring in somebody who knows Brooklyn Beckham better than we all do, that's for sure. It's someone who probably has a better insight in that dynamic in that family, particularly Lady Victoria, because she was romantically attached to Brooklyn when they were both young teenagers. It's Tallia Storm, the singer, who claims she was Brooklyn's first love and joins me now. Tallia, welcome to Uncensored.
Hi, how are you?
Well, good. So for those who don't know your important role in the history of the Beckhams, you dated, I think, Brooklyn for about 18 months in 2014. Is that right?
Okay, so that's actually not true. I can't escape this Brooklyn story that has been going on for like 10 years now. And I'd like to think I'm here as a broadcaster and I've definitely done my air miles now, but we were friends when I was younger and it was definitely my first crush. I was the first ever girl spotted with Brooklyn for sure. But the way that this has kind of attached to me ever since then is insane. But with that, I feel like I'm definitely going to stand here and be like, the compassion I have for this man, because I know that I am irrelevant to this story. 0.2%. Like I'm not a part of this family dynamic, and I know how everywhere I go, you know, I'm presenting at the BAFTA red carpet, going to the Grammys tomorrow. The first question is Brooklyn, Beckhams. How do you know them? How was it? Like, so being in that as a first-hander, i.e. Brooklyn and any of the other siblings, I can imagine comes with tremendous amount of pressure.
Okay, well, look, okay, so let's get to the nitty-gritty then. Did you actually date him?
Yeah, when I was 16. So call it what you want. It was obviously a long time ago, but we were kids. So nothing counts when you're kids.
Hang on, just to be clear, I'm not making some sort of terrible allegation. I said you were teenage crush, right? It was like a little fun teenage romance.
Yeah. I know. That's fine. That is fine. And look, don't get me wrong. I did have a crush on him, and I was that first girl that spotted with him, which I think is why these still bring me into this often. But to be very clear, but the first time I ever met Victoria and I met David, and I was Tallia Storm, the 13-year-old who opened for Elton John. So I wasn't just like a random girl. Like they were kind, they were welcoming, they were lovely to me. And at the time, I had nothing bad to say. I was actually performing at a lot of Eva Longoria's balls, and I know that came from a good word from Victoria. So I feel like I had the seal of approval because I had my own thing going on. Like whether or not I was you know, friends with Brooklyn or hanging out with Brooklyn, I already had a 2-book deal with Scholastic. So I had my own thing on, which I was proud of. But, you know, when it comes to now, at the big 2026, and I'm 27 years old, and I definitely don't think about that family. So forgive me for being slightly defensive, is the fact that that is the first name that comes up no matter where I am in the world. But I'm literally going to LA tomorrow to present on the red carpet at the Grammys, and it doesn't matter what I do, it's brooklyn.com. So the only thing I will say is, I was listening to the debate, you guys all having a go at him. He didn't choose to be born into that family. He was born into that family. Yes, it comes with incredible amount of privilege, but he's still a young boy finding his feet now on the other side of the world with a soulmate, with his new lady.
He's not that young.
Yeah, but I
I've
know.
got a 25.
I've got a 25-year-old. I've got 2 younger brothers, and let me tell you, they have got a long way to go. I'm 27 and I'm only finding my feet now, and I've been at this since I was 13. Like, and men take a lot longer to mature. So I think now he's finally finding that voice and that power to say, hang on a minute, I'm not this little show pony. I don't want to do all this. And, you know, we contradict ourselves, because one minute we're saying we don't have it in him. Next minute we're saying he did take these photos of the elephants and he did do all these business ventures. He absolutely did not. I'm sure that was an incredible team behind him making him do all these things. But, like, the story doesn't really add up. So we either think he's smart and he's done all these things that we own, or we think it's Brand Beckham and he's been forced into this since he was 10 years old. So it's like, which one is it?
So do you have any sympathy for him or not?
I have incredible amount of sympathy. I think, especially in the UK, we only have compassion for vulnerability when it's entertainment. But when a young man is just being vulnerable and saying, hey, this is how I feel, regardless of your opinion on certain lines, because certain lines are questionable, but you have to, from the human perspective, be like, this is a boy who was born into the spotlight, showing pain, let's have some compassion, let's have empathy, because I'm not gonna lie, that doesn't make him look cool. You know, so that would have taken a lot for him to come out and say that. You know, they're the biggest, most iconic brand in the world. I'm sure he didn't just decide overnight, let me go and create a war with my parents. That's not kind. You know, and it's like all that money in the world, for me especially, when I'm building my brand and my personality, it's like, my family is the most important thing I have.
Yeah,
like,
but, you know, but my problem with him, is he wangs on in this statement, you know, amongst all sorts of incendiary things, that the problem with the family is you're all judged by what you put on social media. Where's he made the statement? On his Instagram page.
Yeah, but what do you want him to do? Wait, he doesn't
followers.
have his own, you know, Piers Morgan Uncensored. What is he going to do?
Issue a statement through a press person like everybody else.
But that's even worse. Then
right?
we'd be like, we would be here going, can you believe he's done a Beckham on a Beckham?
Yes, but my point being, he's using the very social media he's claiming to so detest. and yet he's an aggressive user of it to promote himself.
I don't think he's
time.
necessarily hating on social media. I think he's hating on the puppet master he's been born into. And, you know, you said there that he's got the 15 million followers because of the Beckham brand, but, you know, I don't think he's done really anything with that. And I'm sure if he tried, he really wanted to build something with that name, with what we're saying here and the privilege that brings. He'd have his own show now. He'd be entertainment. You can quite obviously see he doesn't care. He doesn't want to be...
I think we're seeing the start of the campaign now. There'll be the book and there'll be the Netflix series and everything else. It's going to follow the Harry and Meghan playbook. You told an interesting story about how Brooklyn came to see one of your gigs early on in Hanover Square when you were very young and it was all sweet and innocent. Whatever. I don't care, right? You were just associated with him. It's fine. It was a little teenage romance. Who cares? But you were around the families, I think, the interesting point. And you said Victoria sent a security team during the day to check the venue. I thought it's not that deep, but okay. When we went to the gig that night, Brooklyn came in with my sister as I was sound checking. And then when we left with this security, there were 20 paparazzi outside. Mm-hmm. Do you think they were told to be there?
Yeah,
and if so, by who?
Since then, yes, they were. But at the time, I got such a fright because we'd been hanging around for ages. By this point, David had already dropped Brooklyn off at my house. I'd met Victoria in her pajamas. Like, it was all just lovely and no big deal. So when he came to the gig and he sent the security team at the start, that was already a bit off because it was like we're chilling, like it's not that deep. You've come to my house, there's no security team there, you know. So then when we left and there was all these people outside, I was frightened thinking, oh my goodness, I don't want him to think this was me. But then later, at this point, this was like 10 years ago, so in London there was like 20, 30 paps about, like that was a thing. And then they were all like, oh yeah, we found out from Team Victoria. Now, at the time, that was just normal to them. Now, this is what they're telling me. And I just got frightened because I was like, I don't want them to think I'm that. I've already got my Elton John story. I've already got my book deal. I don't need something from this, you know. So that was a bit of a shock because I didn't see that coming.
But that's very indicative of what they're like. I think they just use the media aggressively to promote themselves. Tallia, it's good to talk to you. Have a good time at the Grammys.
Thank you.
Let's change gears. Let's go back to the panel. I'm not sure we gained an awful lot of new insight into it, other than that the story I thought was interesting about the paparazzi and Team Victoria calling them in. That was certainly my understanding, was they would regularly tip off the paps about what was going on. But in that case, specifically, a burgeoning little teenage harmless romance between Brooklyn and Tallia, that was a commodity to be promoted in that way, which is, you know, that can be damaging. Esther?
I mean, I think so, but I think for a young girl like her, of course. But again, this is brand Beckham. They are as aggressive as it comes when it comes to making money. And this is why David was so incensed by his proximity to the royal family that didn't result in him getting a knighthood. It's because they want the ultimate PR machine after their name. And again, this goes back to Brooklyn. It's not his fault he was born into it, but he certainly benefited from it. And I don't understand this two sides game. On the one hand, it's not his fault that he was born into it. But on the other hand, we owe him empathy because he's whinging online about his mother grinding on him at a wedding. I can't really, you have to take the good with the bad. Brand Beckham is who they are. The only reason why we're talking about them is because they pull stunts like calling the paparazzi on a 13-year-old singer. Yeah. But in the case of Brooklyn Beckham, they're still his family. He could have said, I'm not going to speak to them and never have said a word about it online. Why does he have to take it to Instagram? Why should we all care? Seriously.
Yeah, I just think it's all a bit pathetic.
Well,
honestly.
I think the point he was making, I mean, I think we can all agree that some of the statements were a lot. But I think the point Brooklyn was trying to make was that they keep talking about him and that he wants them to stop talking about him. But he perhaps could have done that in a bit more of a...
But he did that by doing a massive Instagram post. Then we're hearing there's a multi-million-dollar book deal. Then there'll be this is the Harry Meghan playbook. We want privacy, but actually only so we can sell our own. We've been here on this rodeo. Let's turn to something even more unedifying, which I didn't think was humanly possible. And let's start with you, Andy, on this. Blake Lively v. Justin Baldoni, it's so cringe-making, the whole thing. From start to finish, I think it's just all bullshit, is my overall position. But they've dug themselves in, particularly Blake Lively, so deep, there's no way out now than to keep plowing on and on and on. However many relationships get torched in the process, one of which is Taylor Swift, we're told. I suspect there's going to be many more, because all these emails and texts keep leaking out. And it makes them all look like a bunch of mean girls, mean boys. All of it's unedifying, isn't it?
Piers, I could go on for 10 hours about this. What this whole thing is just proving is just the ego of Hollywood, how disgusting it is. I mean, Blake Lively is literally subpoenaing me because of my coverage, Piers. It's gotten that ugly. I'm still in it here in the state of Tampa, Florida. They are subpoenaing me. I've appealed it to the 11th Circuit. I'm taking it to the Supreme Court. They're coming after me because of my reporting. That's why they're coming after me. It's absurd. It's absurd. The things I've seen in this case, the text messages that have been revealed by Ryan to Ben Affleck, to Matt Damon.
Yeah.
Like, I get people are over it. I get people want to move on, but please don't allow you to not see just what's happening. The abuse of power is from that duo. And while a lot of people are saying, oh, they're all bad, they're doing a disservice to this, because I think Justin didn't really do anything to warrant any of this. And he didn't instigate any of this. Blake and Ryan have put so many. Jamila, like world famous feminist actress, literally just dropped an Instagram over the weekend calling out Blake and Ryan, not specifically by name, but did it as much because Blake leaked her own text messages where she was in a private chat talking with her girls about how offended she was by Blake's marketing. Blake and Ryan refused to accept any accountability and have ballooned this, spending millions of dollars that could have gone towards actually helping victims of domestic violence. A book that means so much to so many people that's now been completely lost in the shuffle because they couldn't take a hit and admit they marketed a film poorly and that Blake was kind of a cold, mean girl during that promotion. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah, it is mind-boggling. I mean, James, I was reading the text messages. It's all such kind of pathetic, low-rent, bitchy Hollywood crap. And yet hundreds of millions of dollars are getting invested in all this. And the irony of a movie called It Ends With Us, which is a really good film. It's one of the best films I've watched in a long time, right? Probably because of all the tension that was simmering around, which is not an unusual thing on a Hollywood set. But I do think, I really liked Blake Lively before all this, right? And it's put me right off her just as a person. I'm like, this is terrible.
The film is amazing, and I think it's, regardless of the outcome of this case, it's incredible that it's getting so many eyes, because that story, It Ends With Us, the book and the movie, are really important, and that will help a lot of people who are experiencing domestic violence, domestic abuse. So there's a big win here for the world, even if the actual drama surrounding it is horrific. The WhatsApps don't really bother me too much, to be honest. I don't think anyone is innocent if our WhatsApps were to leak. I mean, I dread to see what you've written about me in your WhatsApps, Piers. I imagine some very incendiary things.
It's actually worse. You know what? It's worse than you could possibly think. I don't think I've ever mentioned you.
Have you been using Grok to make nudes of me again? I'm sure. I honestly... it's horrible, but I don't think it's right to, people are calling Taylor Swift horrible names online. She was supporting her friend. They were discussing something.
Yeah, I agree. I don't blame
I'm sorry.
Taylor Swift.
That's where you lose me. I think this whole both sides are in the wrong is actually just disingenuous, especially if you've looked at what's happened. Justin Baldoni was a successful actor in his own right. Of course, he's not a Blake Lively or Ryan Reynolds adjacent or anything near Taylor Swift, but he was a respectable actor who's cutting his chops in directing. Now, when you look at these texts between Blake Lively and her whole coven of witches, she had clearly, from the beginning, planned on taking over this film. She had been making disparaging comments of him even before they started filming, saying that he's a loser and that he doesn't deserve this project. And she would probably have wanted to have taken over control of this project even before his studio bought the rights to it. So clearly she had a mindset. Sony executives called her a terrorist, which again, it's not a both sides thing. When you have a leading actress being called by the studio that's sponsoring this a terrorist, she is quite clearly the problem. The fact that she's calling Taylor Swift her dragon, and Taylor Swift, who has not covered herself in glory, I don't care what you have to say. She was saying, oh, I was defending my friend. I wasn't even there. I didn't see the film. I was traveling around the world. There are text messages between Blake Lively and Taylor where they were planning on ambushing Justin Baldoni, which actually matches his account of what happened. They ambushed him so that he would edit bits of the film to reflect what Blake Lively wanted. Taylor Swift cannot pretend to be innocent in all this and say, "Oh, I've been used by my friend. I didn't realize this whole setup." Right. She was talking like a PR agent, basically, trying to set up all her coven of witches to support her.
They were smearing him.
Andy, the point surely, Andy, is no one's going to win here. I mean, even if she
Justin will win.
She's lost.
No, because Brian, Ryan, and Blake is dead. basically.
No, I agree. I agree. But I mean,
they'll
even
all
if
make movies again. They're all
even
going to
if-
make movies again. I do think that. But yeah, Justin's going to take a hit. He has taken the hit.
they're all
But I think
damaged.
once it goes to trial, because I was at the hearing last night. All this could get thrown out within the week if the judge goes, and I kind of hope he does. But if it doesn't and it goes to a jury, which is what Blake defended in the last hearing, this jury is going to laugh them out of the court, Piers. We're literally there because of a
Well, I mean,
lean-in
juries
and
don't really have
sniff.
Juries aren't particularly great with domestic abuse and any of that stuff anyway, are they? Like, when they see celebrity, if we're looking at like the P. Diddy stuff and the 50 Cent documentary, they tend to just be like...
we all
There's
know
none of that
what
here.
we've read. There's no proper abuse here or anything. This is just a couple of actors who didn't get
Do you
on,
honestly think
right,
that
who
she's
then-
completely made this up? Do you really think that? I
Yes.
just
Because
like
she wrote
whether or
it.
not you find her irritating
but wait,
or that you think she has a
I'm
coven
curious.
of witches behind her, Esther.
I
Whether
love
or not
this.
you think that, I think
What's
it's
the allegation? What's her allegation?
What's the allegation? What exactly was he
Tell
trying
me.
to do?
What did he
she's
do?
I
Sexually
think
assault
she's
her
telling
once.
us.
So what-
No. I want
what's
to hear
the-
specifically what he did. I
No.
love this when someone
I
comes
don't
after
wanna be
me.
subpoenaed.
What did he do?
What did he do?
What
What is the worst? Hang on, James. What is the worst thing Justin Baldoni did?
As far as I can tell, between reading between the lines, because it's impossible to really cut through what's going on, it
There
sounds
must
as
have
though
been some lines you're
look,
reading.
it sounds as though she was not comfortable, right? That's basically.
Oh, for God's sake!
What do you mean,
All right,
for
I
God's
rest my
sake?
case.
That
What-
goes to federal court. Why? Uncomfortable for what?
I'm not Blake Lively, and I don't think it's fair for you
Let
to
me
put me in a
tell you.
position to have to defend
Let
her.
me tell
I
you.
am
$3 million
purely
Let me tell
saying
you.
left.
that this is
Let
all.
me tell you, I'm sitting here in severe discomfort, right? I broke my hip last week, right? I'm on very powerful drugs. The pain is throbbing. That's discomfort, right? Not a bloke that you're making this movie with where you're both going to get hugely wealthy and successful out of it, and you just don't like each other very much.
just
It's
think-
really what it boils down to.
I think we all know that the entertainment industry isn't necessarily always safe. And I think it's okay to acknowledge that. And I think that is where I'm coming from. I think we should acknowledge
Well, it was
that
perfectly
even
safe
though
for
it
Blake
looks
Lively.
glitzy and everyone's
Sorry.
earning a lot of money, so like boo-hoo,
All right.
let's not feel sorry for them.
I don't
think
think-
ultimately-
I don't
The
see.
judge in the
Amber
hearing
was
said,
using.
"What's the line?" He literally said in a hearing, "This is the judge to Blake Lively's lawyers. Are all directors now not allowed to improvise in a scene before going to a grand jury?"
Exactly.
That's what the judge himself
Exactly.
said it. They have nothing. They have nothing. Blake is going to embarrass herself in that court.
Okay, we're going to see how it plays out. Very quickly, Kanye West has taken out an extraordinary whole-page advertisement in today's Wall Street Journal. An unprecedented apology, blaming all his anti-Semitism and pro-Nazi crap on a detachment from reality caused by injury to the frontal lobe of his brain in a car accident 25 years ago. He said it broke his jaw, caused injury to the front frontal lobe of the brain. At the time, the focus was on the visible damage. The deeper injury, the one inside my skull, went unnoticed. I lost touch with reality. Things got worse the longer I ignored the problem. I said and did things I deeply regret. Some of the people I love the most I treated the worst. You endured fear, confusion, humiliation, the exhaustion of trying to love someone who was at times unrecognizable. I became detached from my true self. I gravitated in that fractured state toward the most destructive symbol I could find, the swastika, and even sold t-shirts bearing it. I regret and am deeply mortified by my actions in that state and am committed to accountability, treatment, and meaningful change. It doesn't excuse what I did, though. I'm not a Nazi or an anti-Semite. I love Jewish people. My words are the leader of my community have real global impact and influence. In my mania, I lost complete sight of that. James, I got a feeling we might reach a weird point of agreement here because I have seen some using the mental health card claptrap in my time. But the idea that I interviewed him for 2 hours, remember, at the height of all this, and I wasn't thinking this is a guy having problems from his front lobe 25 years ago. I was thinking this is an attention-seeking narcissist deliberately stirring up incredibly vile anti-Semitic sentiment at a time when we could least want to have that in society. Brazenly talking about Hitler and swastikas and using it on a signal and so on. And I actually feel disgusted when people like this, when their careers go completely tits up as his had, and he realizes that the money tree's been turned off through revulsion, public revulsion, they turn to mental health. They suddenly remember they had a car crash 25 years ago. And that explains everything. The terrible way he treated Kim Kardashian, the terrible way he treated all her family, the terrible way he treated absolutely everybody, Apparently, it's all down to his frontal lobe 25 years ago. Bullshit.
Yeah, he's a twat. I think he's a twat. No one has you can't say, oh, I've got bipolar, so that's why I love the Nazis. It's just, it makes absolutely no sense. There are millions of people that suffer from mental health issues like this and are not a twat. Like, it doesn't negate the fact that you did those things, regardless of what your mental health issues are. You need to, and it's just so irritating. It makes me so angry because it affects people that do suffer from these diseases and these issues, and it makes them look bad. And how dare he say the things he's saying? If you really are sorry, don't pay for an advert. What you should do is you should give all your royalties to Jewish people, to the black community, to the people you've hurt. That's how you say sorry. You take accountability. You don't just release a statement that's probably not even written by you and then sign it and pay for it to go in the paper. It's insane behavior. That shouldn't use that word because
I have to defend Kanye here, not because I'm defending what he said in the past, and he's obviously acknowledging that what he said has been unacceptable. But Kanye West's mental health issues have been well documented into the early 2000s, so it's not like we're just finding this about him now. Even from the time where he basically like 10 years ago when he started this nonsense and when he stormed the stage with Taylor Swift on it and everyone was saying that there's something must be rooted in his mental health struggles that he's talked about since I think 2005. That being said, I'll start to believe him when he gets his wife to wear clothes, because it's not enough. Like, the first step is, you can publish this letter and then you can find a way to start atoning for the things that he's done. I think letting his wife leave the house dressed could be one form of atonement where he's going to try and restore her dignity, so we don't have to see her fabulous breasts and arse cheeks ever again. As great as they are, I think they look better with it in clothes. And then we can see from there. But I think I'm not surprised by this because his mental health issues have been a constant struggle. He's constantly talked about coming off medication and all of that. So I think this is not like completely out of the blue where he says, I stubbed my toe and decided to become a Nazi.
No, but you know what? I'm going to be remembering. I've got all sorts of stuff from my past. I'm going to bring up, Andy. Should I need to play this card? I remember breaking I fell off a Segway when I was doing America's Got Talent in 2007 on Santa Monica Boulevard and broke 5 ribs and collapsed a lung. And now I think about it, that is responsible for all of my behavioural pattern since 2007. And the exacerbated element of my hip injury, I think, will also be another good excuse. Andy, serious question. Is there actually any way back for Kanye, do you think?
I mean, you say that, and I just go immediately back to Pete Davidson, who was terrorized by Kanye West, who said on Saturday Night Live, I think the quote was, being mentally ill is not an excuse to act like a jackass. I mean, it stands up now. This is how many, I did suppress 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm going through his apology tour all the way back from 2009 to Taylor Swift, and then Taylor Swift again, and then the 4 years of slavery. He did one on your show, Pierce, about the DEF CON 3. Hebrew Instagram post in December 23, the Wall Street. I mean, he's done this so many times. I'm so bored. I don't think people actually care. Kanye is very good at getting attention. That's what he wants. That's always what this has been about. And I think he's running out of ways to get it. And I think the only way you beat Kanye is by stop talking about him. Even when he apologized, I also don't believe he wrote it. That's not his language. There must be some money.
No, he doesn't read like him. Yeah, I totally agree. I want to end. This is just Roger Waters, the Pink Floyd rock star, who it has a touch of the Kanye's about him in terms of, I think, narcissism and attention-seeking inflammatory statements. And did an interview with him last week in which he lauded the Iranian regime. He's had time to think about this, and he's realised what he should have said. Let's take a look.
I need to clear something up about the interview I did with Piers Morgan and about Iran. Okay, I misspoke. I apologise. I said I support the regime. What I support is the country of Iran, and I support its people's right to self-determination. So anything that can be done to dissuade the United States and Israel from starting a war with Iran, I would encourage. Do I like the Ayatollah Khomeini, whatever his name is? No, I don't.
Easy mistake to make, I think, when you've got, tens of thousands of protesters protesting against their evil regime being slaughtered in the street. Easy mistake to say you support the regime when you actually meant to say, just to clarify, you meant the people who were protesting. and the country. Roger Waters, another one like Kanye Ye West. They should just shut up.
Do you want to maybe take a minute, Piers,
ill-informed narcissists who don't know what they're talking about, love stirring up trouble, and actually hurt and defend a lot of people in the process.
Do you want to
guys,
take this opportunity, Piers, to apologise for any of your opinions in the past whilst everyone else is at it? I mean, you maybe saw the light whilst you were in hospital. Do you want to atone?
No. I've actually reflected on all my opinions and realised that the very few times I thought I was wrong, I was wrong. I was right.
You just said you were wrong, by the way.
James. I appreciate it. Guys, thank you all very much. I appreciate it. Piers Morgan Uncensored is proudly independent. The only boss around here is me. If you enjoy our show, we ask for only one simple thing. Hit subscribe on YouTube and follow Piers Morgan Uncensored on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And in return, we will continue our mission to inform, irritate and entertain. And we'll do it all for free. Independent, uncensored media has never been more critical, and we couldn't do it without you.